go through it. I think we've got more than enough from that brief introduction to the collection. We had promised that we would have a performance today, because when you have stories of the kind that we have in this book, which are magical and strange and unusual and funny and powerful, what can be better than to hear them told as stories? So we are very lucky that we have with us one of the city's leading actors. I use the word actor now instead of actress, but she is female. Ramanjit Kaur. Ramanjit leads a group called the Creative Arts Academy. So she has very, very kindly agreed to do a storytelling, to lead the program off with the one story from the book, and she will have her group along with her to support her. So we'll start by plunging straight into the action of the book through the story that Ramanjit is going to tell us. Now, Ramanjit has been in Calcutta, and that has been one of our, a wonderful blessing for the city, because she came here from Chandigarh, where she was initiated into theatre by one of the most famous and respected directors in the country today. That's Neelam Man Singh Chowdhury. And she brought all her learning and her talent and her passion and commitment to this city. And she has been doing theatre here ever since she first arrived as a young bride. She now has her own, the Creative Arts Academy, and a whole group of dedicated, largely women, I have to say, actors and performers with her. And we look forward to seeing this award-winning actor and director before us today. Please welcome Ramanjit. Please start.
The many tastes of stories and tales, some like sand, subtle and fine, others bigger than God divine, some like droplets, swift and fluid, others like the ocean slow and languid, some that flow like a breeze so fine, others totter like a man after wine. The story is as ancient as the night sky sprinkled with stars when at the crossroads of a certain time there lived a Kaji. A Kaji who had the special favor of the Padsha. Husband to 7 wives, but as fate would have it, the Kaji was unable to father children. Even then, such was the Kaji's thinking that instead of finding faults in himself, he could only find fault in his wives. In place of the children he couldn't have, the Kaji brought home a dog to shower his affection on. The animal was very bright. In just a few days, she became so clear to the Kaji that he could not bear to be away from her for even a second. The dog had a shiny jet black coat of hair, as soft as velvet, a bushy tail, drooping ears, a long and fluffy mane on the head, a sweet and pleasing bark. The people from the neighborhood emulated the Kaji and began to shower the dog with great affection. And as they competed with one another to show who loved the dog the most, the clever people's affection only grew. The Kaji would look on as they inundated her with kisses, petted her, and bathed her, got her ghevar, malpuas, and gulgulas made of ghee and sugar in neat bundles. They would feed her with her own hands with such fondness. Seeing such warmth being demonstrated by everyone, the Kaji could hardly contain the delight in his heart. Once, an extremely astute gentleman suggested that the dog be given a suitable name. इना तो कोई नाम तो देनो पड़सी. ना 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 अरे भाई ना 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 ये सब नाम चोखो लागो नहीं. Caressing his waist-length beard, Kaji said, "No, don't suggest such names. Us humans are named according to our caste. But it's better if cattle and dogs aren't bound by it. What do you think?" Huh? It will be as you say, the gathered people said. Our minds can agree to nothing that you don't agree to, but you are the one who will have to name her. Furrows appeared on the Kaji's forehead. He continued to caress his beard, and said, "Think of some color, a plant, or maybe some bird." And then, all of a sudden, a name emerged from the Kaji's own lips. Koyal. Koyal. Huh? Koyal. Huh? Huh? He exclaimed, "I think Koyal is the perfect name." Ooh, as that is how we write it in Rajasthani. It is a name after all. Everyone who had gathered at the Kaji's mention agreed in unison and exclaimed that such a good name would not have occurred to either Khuda or Ram himself. If one were to compare a koyal to their dear dog and her sweet voice, the bird would lose 7 times over. In just a few days, hearing everyone call her Koyal, the dog too understood that it was her name. But what was immensely surprising was that no one could tell where the Koyal birds that lived in the garden and parks of that neighborhood vanished, one after the other. Meanwhile, sweetness filled the mouth of those who took the dog's name. Perhaps even the gods turned envious of the good fortune of the Kaji's dog. In those days, Kajis were feared even more than Thakkars and lords. Religion and God were, of course, important in their own ways, but everyone was frightened of the Kaji. And owing to this dread, small and big, young and old, none dared forget the name. But cursed death, she can neither be convinced by devotion nor be pleased by flattery. Neither does she care for one's honor nor does she fear anyone. She embraced Koil in the guise of rabies. And finally, after 3 days of immense suffering, even as she looked at her owner with eyes full of pain, she left for the shelter of Ram. The Kaji looked on helplessly as his darling Koil's body became lifeless and cold. As soon as those surrounding the Kaji and his dead pet saw his eyes moisten, they began to wail and howl relentlessly. There took place such a content of bawling and beating of chests and heads that your eyes would scarcely believe it. Deep within every single one was just this wish that the Kaji would take especial notice of their grief. In that race, everyone's throats became sore and the tears streaming from their eyes would not abate. Seeing people weep in this manner, the Kaji's own tears stopped flowing. Now the question was, how was Koil's lifeless body to be honored? Cremated, buried, or surrendered to the water or air? Bolo? Initially, a burial was suggested. But the Kaji's grieving heart could not accept this. He shook his head, and said in a choked voice, "No, I am not going to bury my Koil in this dirty mud. She'll be covered with mold. Her body will rot." After this, neither would he agree to have Koil cremated and with sandalwood ghee and coconuts, nor would he consent to surrender her to the air or immerse her in water. In the same choked voice, he said that if she were burnt, there would be no trace left of his beloved Koil. Leaving her out in the open would mean crows, vultures, and stray dogs would tear her apart. And leaving her in water would make her bloat up. The Kaji would rather die than abandon his Koil to such a terrible fate. How then could the last rites of the lifeless Koil be performed? After a while, a fresh idea occurred to the Kaji. She should be embalmed with the utmost care and placed in a golden cage to be hung up from a branch of a banyan tree so that travelers passing by the tree could benefit from the opportunity to see the blessed Koil. Having shared his plan, the Kaji looked at the throng that had gathered around him and asked, "What do you say?" "Absolutely. Whatever you think," they replied promptly, restless as they were to come to a decision about what to do with the dog's body. "But now we must begin performing her rites. It will reflect well on us only if her rites are performed as befits her great qualities. Where will one get to see such a sacred being?" Thereon, the inhabitants of the Kaji's neighborhood, clever and competent as they were, got everything done in no time at all. No one needed any explanations. Each one of those eager people got for Koil the jewels they could and piled them up in front of the Kaji willingly. While the jeweler melted the gold and built a cage, deft craftsmen stuffed the dog and filled her with preservatives and chemicals. The Kaji looked on teary-eyed while all the preparations were carried out swiftly. A gold chain was suspended from a ring, also made of gold, to hang the cage from the banyan tree. Even after 7 births, the virtues of such well-meaning and devoted people could not be forgotten. Tears began to pour down from the Kaji's eyes. If the Kaji cried so, how could the people hold back? From every pair of eyes there flowed so many tears that 20 eyes would not be enough to hold them. When the cage was finally raised onto shoulders and was about to be taken from the Kaji's mansion, the throng gathered, these wailed, and the crowd gathered there and wailed and bawled. 4 pallbearers, a golden cage balanced on their heads, walked ahead with a crestfallen Kaji following them, and behind him was the throng. The Kaji barely noticed when the pallbearers changed. Then the strange rumors were heard that the tears from everyone's eyes had pooled to form a small stream. And there were so many rumors as there were mouths. Why, people even said that half a dozen innocent children had drowned in that stream. Once the cage was hung from a branch of the banyan tree, the Kaji begged the people to get a hold on themselves, and it was only then that their eyes finally had some respite. Are bas ho gayo, tham jao, shanti rakho, bas karo. After accompanying the Kaji to the threshold of his mansion, they returned to their homes. The next day, even before the sun had risen, a horde of people flocked to the Kaji's house to condole with him. They feared that if they didn't, they would fall out of favor. The infinite and unseen dread of power is not without reason. They would not stop singing Koil's praises. One said how once when he was eating rotis, Koil had joined him and partaken of the same, and despite that he had not found it filthy. Let a man even try to be as clean as her, he said. While the Kaji was delighted to hear this, everyone else was perplexed, not knowing what to say. No one wanted to be left behind. Shortly afterwards, another man concocted a fresh tale and began. I don't want to flatter even God. The Kaji broke in. I get angry even hearing the word flattery. The man continued. वाह वाह वाह
ठीक है मैंने बहुत सुहारे हो तो अगला दिन देखो तो मेरा गुमड़ो ही गायब
वाह 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 वाह. The man continued. Hearing this, the man who had Koil eat with him felt like someone had slapped him. Before he could come up with another tale, the others rushed to sing such praises of Koil that he never got a chance. Blisters on the soles of someone's feet healed at once when Koil licked them. A bald spot on someone's head was completely covered in new hair when Koil drooled over it. Another had ringworm disappear from his face after a full 17 years when he smeared it with the gunk from Koyal's eyes. The touch of Koyal's tail had instantly rid yet another of a migraine. Remember that remedy next time. And now he could not recall how his head used to hurt, even if he tried. Koyal's licks had cured one of eczema and yet another of leprosy. The pain in someone's eye had vanished upon applying kajal mixed with Koyal's saliva on it. The rashes on someone's hand had gone away altogether after he had bandaged that portion with Koyal's shit. Such were the remedies that those gathered to grieve with the Kaji began to vouch for, that even Dhantar Ved would not have been able to think them up. The Kaji, despite being her owner, had not expected Koyal to have such virtues. Hearing about them helped his grief recede considerably. Running his hand over his curly beard, he said, I have racked my brain and grown tired of doing so, but I can't understand one thing. If you all are in such a piteous state after Koyal has departed, what catastrophe will befall you when I am gone?
ना काजी का ना यह बात तो मत बोलो ना मत बोलो हमारी
All around him sat people who were sad and spoke nothing but the truth. Promptly they said, if it's not what your heart desires, then why should you die? There are enough of us sitting right here to die. As long as we are around, how can we let it be your turn? Just hearing of you dying makes us want to stop living. Arey bas karo bhaiyo. Thamo. We will stop breathing before it is time for you to embrace death. If you pass away, the sun itself will freeze and fall out of the sky. And once the sun has fallen, there'll be no moisture and there'll be no rain. And without rain, what grain and what fodder and what cattle? The whole world will perish in suffering and torment. No, we cannot do without you for even a second. Being our master, how can you even think such evil thing? Softening, the Kaji said, if this is what you all want, I will never let such thoughts enter my mind. I was only wondering what you all thought. Does death have ears? Even Vemata would not know the answer to this question. But as fate would have it, the very next year, on the very day Koyal had died, the Kaji too passed away, while he was cleaning his teeth. But what was most surprising, given the Kaji's stature, was that no chaos broke out in the neighborhood following his demise. Forget the sun and the moon, not even a green leaf on any of the trees in the settlement seemed to grieve his passing. But what was so unexpected about this, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Even he who is the most foolish knows fully well that once dead, neither does a Raja come alive nor a Patsha. Then what is a mere Kaji? The dead can neither be pleased nor displeased. They can neither bless nor condemn. And without being able to do these, one is worse than even a stone. The new Kaji was everything to the people now, the master of their peace and their pain. Power itself knew better than to deny his wishes. Neither country nor faith come before self-interest. To be mindful of this is the foremost virtue of a clever man. What harm could it possibly cause if one person didn't attend the Kaji's burial? There wasn't a paucity of people in the neighborhood. Without needing any guru to guide them, everyone instantly thought the same things. Respect for the dog followed from respect for the Kaji. People fear a dog because they fear its owner. Koel's golden cage had fulfilled their wishes before. Why would it do now? Why does even the sun glimmer like gold? How pleased would the new Kaji be to lay his hands on this invaluable cage? As this thought flashed through their minds, everyone dashed to the banyan tree. In no time at all, there was a gathering of people as numerous as the countless leaves on the tree. At once the cage was lowered and the dog's body taken out and thrown away. The cage was thoroughly washed and polished. Meanwhile, the dog's skin was trampled underfoot by the spirited throng. The preservatives and stuffing mingled with the dust, became indistinguishable from it. Without anyone leading them or telling them anything, the crowd's feet, accustomed to their ways for ages, turned towards the new Kaji's home on their own. The mind whose job it is to think did not have to think at all. The new Kaji was lost in thought over some quandary when suddenly, hearing a commotion, he stepped outside. That as soon as I started to write about his burial, my pen ran out of ink. But I have full faith in the intelligence of my virtuous readers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Raman, do you want to quickly introduce your co-actors?
So we have Seema Grover with us, Vinita Abhavi, Vinita Poddar, Shalini Sethi, and Pragya Goyal.
And thank you, Ramanjit Kaur and the Creative Arts Group for that very lively rendering of the story. I'd like to now invite Vishes to come up and let us have our kind of discussion around the book. One second, let me get my copy.